She just wrapped one of the busiest summers of her life. And instead of taking a break, Taylor Swift walked into a small theater in Los Angeles, sat across from the head of the Recording Academy, and spent nearly 50 minutes doing something she almost never does: talking in real depth about the entire arc of her 20-year career, for a room of maybe 100 people. On August 18, 2026, the Recording Academy's Songwriters and Composers Wing hosted an invite-only conversation with Taylor Swift at the Grammy Museum's Clive Theater in Los Angeles, an intimate venue that seats a fraction of what you'd expect for an artist of Swift's scale. The audience was made up of roughly 100 members of the Songwriters and Composers Wing itself. Working songwriters and composers, many of whom are likely voters in the very Grammy categories Swift could be up for at the 2027 ceremony. The session was recorded live, then released publicly on August 24th, meaning the wider world only just got to see what that small room experienced nearly a week earlier. And what they got to see wasn't a typical press junket. It was Recording Academy CEO Harvey Mason Jr. sitting across from Swift for a genuinely career-spanning conversation, timed deliberately to coincide with the 20th anniversary of her self-titled debut album. Context matters enormously here, and this event landed at maybe the most eventful stretch of Taylor Swift's entire adult life. In the span of a single summer, she was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, released an original song for Toy Story 5, and married Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce on July 1st. This appearance at the Grammy Museum marked her first public performance since that wedding, which alone would have made this a major moment even before she said a single word. So why choose this setting, a small museum theater, an invite-only crowd of songwriters, for her big re-entrance into public life, rather than a splashy televised special or a massive stage? If you know anything about how Swift has talked about her own career, the answer tracks perfectly with who she's always said she is. Underneath the arena tours and record-breaking numbers, a songwriter first. Mason guided Swift through a genuinely comprehensive walk through her catalogue and creative evolution, from her earliest obsession with music around age 10, through the mechanics of learning instruments and studying song structure, all the way through the major pivots that have defined her career: the leap from country into pop, her creative partnerships with hitmakers Max Martin and Shellback, and the character-driven storytelling that later defined albums like Folklore. One of the most grounding threads of the entire conversation was Swift reflecting on her roots, and notably doubling down on how connected she still feels to them. "I love my country roots more and more the further along this path I get, and I want to honor them more and more and more," she said. "I feel more tied to them, more loyal to them. The people that shaped who I am as an artist and as a writer, that all happened in Nashville." She traced that connection back to a formative memory, hearing that Faith Hill had been discovered performing at Nashville's legendary Bluebird Cafe, and how that story planted a personal goal in her: to someday perform there herself. Fittingly, the entire conversation was anchored around a single theme Swift herself named memory. 20 years after her debut single, Tim McGraw, she reflected on just how much that first song foreshadowed everything that came after. "It contained hints at everything that was going to happen in the next 20 years, she said. A striking observation given how far her sound, image, and storytelling have traveled since then. Swift also opened up in a way she rarely does about the psychological weight of being one of the most famous people on the planet. When Mason pressed her on how she's learnt to trust her own instincts while sharing deeply personal work with the public, she brought it back to something simple: the fans. "I'm making music because I'm playing for the fans," she said. "I'm putting this out for people who care about it and who look to music as a way to cope with their life in the way that I did." She also described her actual coping mechanisms for handling the sheer scale of her career, a level of fame that, by her own admission, can still feel overwhelming even after 2 decades in the spotlight. One recurring reminder she gives herself, she said, is deceptively simple: "You chose this." It's a small phrase, but it does a lot of work. An artist consciously reclaiming ownership over a life that could otherwise feel like it's happening to her rather than because of her. And then there was the moment that's already spreading across social media on its own: Swift's candid, funny admission about how she handles online mockery. "Sometimes when people are mocking me, it's really fun to mock them back," she said. "Sometimes I have to use words that they have to look up in order to talk shit about." It's a rare, unfiltered flash of humor from an artist who is usually intensely careful about her public image. And it's exactly the kind of moment that only tends to surface in a room this small and this trusted. If the conversation was the heart of the event, the performance that followed was its emotional climax. Swift moved to a piano fans will recognize instantly. The same flower-covered instrument she played every night during the surprise song segment of the Eras tour. What followed was a medley unlike anything she's performed publicly before. She opened with I Knew It, I Knew You, her newly recorded track for Toy Story 5, before transitioning into August from Folklore, and finally into the extended 2021 version of All Too Well, originally from 2012's Red. Structurally, it's hard to overstate how deliberate that sequencing feels. 3 songs, 3 completely different eras of her life. A brand new piece written in the afterglow of new marriage, a wistful summer heartbreak anthem from her most introspective album, and arguably the most devastating breakup song of her entire career. Performed back-to-back on the same piano that soundtracked years of stadium tours, it read less like a setlist and more like a single artist, quietly narrating her own emotional timeline in real time. Heartbreak, hope, and love, compressed into a few minutes at a piano in front of 100 people. Swift herself described the songwriting process behind I Knew It, I Knew You as something entirely different from her usual approach, comparing it to the character-driven escape she found while writing Folklore. It was a pressure release valve, she said. It was an escape into my imagination. It was all of a sudden I was walking on a cliffside and looking at the ocean instead of just being at home. Before wrapping the session, Swift turned her attention directly to the songwriters and composers in the audience, the exact peers who make up the Recording Academy body that will help determine her eligibility across a wide range of categories heading into the 2027 Grammys, where she's already being projected for as many as 10 nominations. Her advice was simple, but it landed with the kind of sincerity that only comes from 20 years of actually living it. Show up to work even when the idea fairy doesn't, she told them. I hope that you will not be the person who shoots down everyone's ideas in the room, but has not brought any of your own. I hope that you will remember the yes and of the improv session that is your recording sessions, and that is life as well. She closed with a line that doubled as both songwriting philosophy and personal mantra. Enthusiasm can protect you from anything, I would know. Attendees who were actually in the room came away describing something rare. One songwriter who spoke with Swift afterward, Devoskin, recalled that even with dozens of other people waiting to speak with her, she was in no hurry to move me along. That is how good Taylor Swift is in her quality of presence. A true star shines light upon us. We leave feeling brighter. In an era where most major artist interviews are tightly controlled, heavily edited, and built for viral soundbites, the Icon sessions felt like something genuinely different. An artist at the absolute peak of her cultural power, choosing intimacy over spectacle, and a room of songwriters over an arena of fans, even if just for one afternoon.